If everything you've built fell apart today, your job, your reputation, your relationships, what would be left of you? Pause. Don't run from the question. Let it press against your chest a little. Because if your entire identity is stitched together by what you do, what you have, or who validates you, what happens when all that collapses? Most people don't realize how fragile their sense of self really is. They walk around like everything is under control, until one event, one moment, one word, and suddenly the scaffolding collapses. And when it does, many discover something terrifying. There is no self left standing, only the debris of borrowed identities and unexamined beliefs. We're not taught to ask this kind of question. We're taught to build, to perform, to achieve, but rarely to be. And certainly not to ask what remains when everything else is stripped away. But this question, this uncomfortable, disorienting question, might be the most important one you ever face. Because here's the truth. Collapse is not the enemy. Pretense is. Living decades without ever meeting the person you really are, that's the tragedy. When things fall apart, when life tears down the structures you leaned on, you finally meet the raw material of your soul. And often, it's the first honest meeting you've had in years. This video is not about survival tips or feel-good motivation. It's a confrontation with reality, with mortality, with the inner void we all try to avoid. But it's also an invitation to rebuild not on illusions, but on something real, something that can't be taken from you. So I ask again with all the weight it deserves. If everything in your life crumbled today, who would remain? Leave your answer in the comments if you dare. And if this question shook you, even a little, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's walk through the ruins together. You don't need a perfect life to become a whole person. You just need the courage to stay present in the collapse. What comes next might be painful, but it could also be the beginning of something real. And that's exactly where we're headed. From the outside, everything looks fine. You smile at the right moments, post curated glimpses of happiness, show up to work, fulfill your roles. But inside, something is cracking. Quietly, secretly, and you hope no one notices. Because even you aren't sure how deep the fracture runs. This is the collapse that doesn't make headlines. It doesn't come with ambulances or dramatic scenes. It's slow, silent, and terrifying. Emotional fatigue that numbs your joy. A relationship that's alive in name, but dead in spirit. A job that drains more than it gives. A life where you no longer recognize yourself, but can't quite say why. You tell yourself it's just a phase, that things will get better once you finish that project, solve that conflict, take that vacation. But deep down, there's a gnawing suspicion. You're unraveling. And the scariest part is that you're doing everything right, yet still feel hollow. Why? Because this quiet implosion comes when the structures you built no longer align with who you are, or who you were meant to be. It happens when your life becomes a performance, not a reflection of your essence. And that's not just exhausting, it's unsustainable. Psychologically, this inner dissonance breeds anxiety, depression, chronic dissatisfaction. Philosophically, it reveals a deeper crisis, the loss of telos, of purpose. When your actions no longer serve something greater than comfort or approval, meaning erodes. And without meaning, no structure can hold for long. Literature knew this long before we had diagnostic labels. Think of Ivan Ilyich in Tolstoy's piercing novella. A respected man, admired and comfortable, until illness forced him to see the lie he'd lived. What if my whole life has been wrong? He asked. It's a question many today are too busy to ask, until life forces them to. The invisible collapse is not failure, it's a signal, a call from within, not to patch the surface but to go deeper, to ask, what parts of my life are borrowed, untrue, or empty? What have I constructed for others but never truly inhabited? You don't have to wait for the whole structure to fall. You can begin now, by noticing the cracks, by being honest with yourself, even if no one else sees the collapse. Because healing begins in truth, and truth begins in silence, the silence you've been avoiding. We love to believe we're in control. We plan our days, our careers, our relationships. We set goals, track progress, and imagine futures that feel almost guaranteed, so long as we follow the script. And when life seems to obey our plans, the illusion deepens. We confuse predictability with sovereignty. But control is fragile. One phone call, one diagnosis, one betrayal, and suddenly the future you were steering vanishes. And what remains is the undeniable truth. We were never in control. Not really. We were only managing probabilities in a world that doesn't owe us certainty. This isn't just a philosophical idea, it's a psychological fault line. Our need for control is often rooted in fear. Fear of chaos, fear of vulnerability, fear of suffering. So we build routines, expectations, and safety nets, not realizing that clinging too tightly to them makes us more brittle, not more secure. Viktor Frankl, who survived the most dehumanizing conditions imaginable, observed that while we cannot always control our circumstances, we can always choose our response. This, he insisted, is where our true power lies. Not in mastering outcomes, but in mastering ourselves. But to reach that place, something has to break. Our illusions must collapse. And this is painful. We grieve the loss of a fantasy, one where we were the architects of every detail, insulated from the randomness of life. But in that grief lies a gift, the opportunity to trade false control for true agency. St. Thomas Aquinas spoke of providence not as a rigid fate, but as a higher wisdom guiding the world beyond our comprehension. Recognizing our limits is not a sign of weakness, it's the beginning of humility. And humility is the soil where real wisdom grows. So ask yourself, what am I clinging to out of fear? What have I mistaken for control when it's only been comfort? Can I face the reality that life is not mine to command, but still mine to engage with courage and responsibility? The collapse of control is not the end of freedom. It's the beginning of freedom rightly understood. A freedom not of outcomes, but of attitude. Not of domination, but of participation. You were never meant to hold everything together. You were meant to be held by something greater. You didn't see it coming. Maybe it was a conversation that ended everything. A pink slip after years of loyalty. A medical test that shattered your sense of health. Or that moment when someone you trusted turned away, and the world tilted just enough to never feel the same again. We all have, or will have, that moment. The one where the floor gives out. And it doesn't matter how strong you thought you were. In that moment, you are reduced, exposed, fragile, and nothing in your past, no skill or achievement can fully shield you from the collapse. And yet, this moment is not rare. It's not the exception to a well-ordered life. It's a guarantee built into the human condition. The Greeks called it ananke, the necessity of suffering woven into existence. In Christian tradition, the cross stands at the center, not despite its horror, but because of it. It is the place where meaning is forged through the breaking. But when the breaking comes, the first reaction is disbelief. How could this happen to me? As if your competence or kindness made you immune. And in that moment, what truly breaks is not just your circumstance, it's your story. The one that said, if I do everything right, I will be safe. What do you do when that story dies? This is where many freeze or fragment. Some numb themselves with distractions. Others spiral into bitterness. But a few, those who are willing to stay present in the ruins, begin to see something deeper. That the loss may have stripped them of much, but not of everything. Dostoevsky, who faced prison, illness, and despair, wrote, "Man is a mystery. It needs to be unraveled, and if you spend your whole life unraveling it, don't say you've wasted time. Suffering isn't a detour. It's a doorway into that mystery, into yourself. If you're here, if you're in the rubble right now, let me say this clearly. Your pain is real, and it matters. But it's not meaningless, and you are not alone. This breaking may be brutal, but it is not barren. Sometimes life must undo you to give you back to yourself. So breathe, and stay. The breaking isn't the end. It may be where the real work finally begins. When the collapse comes, something in us wants to run. Not physically, though sometimes we do that too, but inwardly. We want to escape the pain, the shame, the sense of being exposed. We reach almost instinctively for anything that can numb the ache. Scrolling endlessly, drinking more than we should, diving into work, chasing distractions that promise relief but deliver only delay. Pain is a teacher we don't want to sit with, so we silence it. We call it weakness. We tell ourselves to move on, stay strong, keep going. But that kind of strength isn't strength. It's denial in disguise. And the longer we avoid the ruins, the more they rot. Unfaced sorrow doesn't vanish, it festers. And what could have been healing becomes poison. Psychologically, this is well understood. Avoidance reinforces fear. The more we escape discomfort, the more we teach our minds that the pain is too much to bear. But it isn't. You are stronger than you think, but not in the way the world defines strength. Not in the way that pretends nothing happened. In the way that dares to remain, eyes open, heart cracked, still breathing. Philosophically, we might recall the Stoics, those fierce realists who taught that peace isn't found in what happens to us, but in how we meet it. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. To flee is to rob yourself of that proving, to deny the chance to discover what you're really made of." Spiritually, this is echoed in every tradition worth trusting. The descent precedes the resurrection. Before transformation, there is fire, and fire burns. But here's what matters. You don't have to have answers yet. You don't have to be okay. You only have to resist the urge to run. Stay with what hurts. Mourn what was lost. Let the grief do its honest, unhurried work. Ask yourself, what am I using to avoid feeling? What would happen if just for today I stopped running? If I stood still in the ruins and listened? What you might hear in that silence is not just your pain, but your soul whispering through it. And it's been waiting a long time to speak. When the noise fades, the titles vanish, and the applause stops, what is left? When your plans collapse and the roles you played no longer fit, who are you now? These are not just abstract questions. They are the essence of every real turning point in life, because at some moment, sooner or later, you will have to answer them. And most people don't know how to, because for years, perhaps decades, identity was built like a house of mirrors, reflecting what others needed, what the culture rewarded, what survival required. But now those mirrors are shattered, and in the quiet after the fall, you are faced with something unfamiliar. Yourself, unadorned. What remains when everything goes away? Some discover that the answer is not much, but even that is not the end. It's the beginning. It's the first glimpse of something real. The awareness that what we called self was often a collage of expectations, and that underneath all the fragments there might be something more, a center not built by effort, but discovered through surrender. Philosophers have long pointed here. St. Thomas Aquinas spoke of the soul as the deepest principle of the person, immaterial, indivisible, enduring. Viktor Frankl insisted that even in the most brutal conditions, something remains untouchable. The freedom to choose one's attitude, to take a stand toward one's suffering. That freedom, he said, is the last of all human freedoms, and it can never be taken from you. This is what remains, not your job, not your status, not even your strength, but your will, your awareness, your ability to say yes or no to what life presents, your capacity to love, to suffer meaningfully, to begin again. And this discovery isn't glamorous. It often comes through tears, through sleepless nights, through unbearable silences. But it is here, in the absence of everything else, that you finally touch the essential. Ask yourself now, if I lost everything that defines me today, my work, my family, my health, what would still be true about me? What values would I refuse to let go of? What deeper thread would still hold? Whatever your answer is, nurture it, because that is your anchor. That is the you that remains, and that is where real life, honest, grounded, eternal, finally begins. Strip away the titles, the roles, the social scripts. Remove the metrics, likes, salaries, compliments, achievements. What's left? For most of us, the answer is terrifying, not because it's painful, but because it's unknown. We've lived so long in costumes that we've forgotten how our own skin feels. But there is something beneath, always. A core that isn't built. It's uncovered. And it's not made of opinions or trends. It's made of soul, of conscience, of will, of the quiet but unyielding capacity to seek the good even in the dark. Our culture trains us to live from the outside in. We learn to ask, what will they think? Instead of, is this right? We measure ourselves by productivity and popularity, not by integrity or inner coherence. And when those external frames collapse, we panic, not because we lost everything, but because we never truly found anything deeper. Yet that deeper reality waits. And it's not as abstract as it seems. Think of it like this. When you hold to a value, even when it costs you, something eternal in you is revealed. When you tell the truth instead of pleasing, when you forgive instead of retaliate, when you love without demand, you're not acting from persona, but from essence. Julian Marias called this the persona real, the real person beneath all roles and masks. He believed that true identity is not static but narrative. You are not a label. You are a story in motion. And that story becomes worthy not when it is painless, but when it is faithful to the truth. To rediscover this core, you must risk silence, solitude, the discomfort of being unseen, unvalidated. And yet, in that space, something remarkable happens. You start to feel whole. Not perfect, whole. No longer scattered across 100 performances. No longer hostage to others' perceptions. Ask yourself now, who am I when no one is watching? What truths do I still cling to, even when it hurts? What kind of person would I be if I stopped pretending? These questions are not indulgent. They are vital, because one day everything external will fade, and only the essence will remain. If you can find that essence now, honor it, shape it, live from it, you will never truly be lost again, no matter what falls apart. Pain has a way of stripping us bare. It doesn't ask permission. It arrives uninvited, unrelenting. And when it comes, it doesn't just wound, it exposes. It tears through illusions, dismantles your projections, and forces you to face what's underneath, not as punishment, but as revelation. Most people think pain is the enemy of the good life, but what if it's the doorway to it? What if your breaking point is not where you end, but where you begin to see? This is not romanticizing suffering. Pain is brutal and often unjust, but it's also brutally honest. It has no patience for lies, no tolerance for pretending. When everything is going well, we live in a fog of assumptions. I know who I am. I know what matters. I'm strong enough. But suffering cuts through that fog like a blade. It shows you what you actually value, what you can't live without, what still whispers inside you when all else is silent. In The Brothers Karamazov, Dostoevsky gives us the character of Ivan, a man tormented by the suffering of the innocent. His intellectual rebellion leads him to despair, while his brother Alyosha, quiet and open to mystery, allows suffering to humble him into love. Two responses to the same abyss, one that destroys and one that transforms. The difference lies in posture. One resists, demands answers, and becomes bitter. The other kneels, not in surrender to pain itself, but in reverence to what it reveals. Philosophically, this is the distinction between meaningless pain and meaningful suffering. One crushes, the other refines. And that meaning is not handed to you, you must wrestle for it. But in that wrestling, you begin to discover your depth, your soul, the unshakable place in you that no crisis can touch. Ask yourself, what has my pain revealed that I had refused to see? What masks has it torn away? What longings has it awakened? These aren't just emotional insights. They are moral awakenings. Because when pain strips you down, you meet yourself without filters. And in that place you have a choice, to rebuild the lie or to begin living from the truth. The abyss is terrifying, but it's not empty. It holds the possibility of becoming someone new, not in spite of the pain, but through it. After the collapse, after the silence, after the piercing honesty of pain, comes the question, how do I begin again? Most people try to reconstruct their lives exactly as they were, rushing to restore the image, the stability, the rhythm they lost. But if the foundation was false, do you really want to rebuild the same house? What if the goal isn't to get back to normal, but to build something truer? This is the moment where character is formed, not when everything is in place, but when you choose, stone by stone, to rebuild from the core outward. Slowly, intentionally, with values, not appearances, with depth, not performance. It's not glamorous. There are no shortcuts here. It's the quiet labor of waking up early to pray or reflect, even when it feels empty. The hard conversations where you speak the truth instead of protecting your image. The small choices to forgive, to wait, to act with integrity when no one's watching. St. Thomas Aquinas reminds us that virtue is not a feeling, but a habit. You become just by doing just acts. You become courageous by choosing courage, even when afraid. And these choices, repeated in the dark, slowly sculpt the soul. They shape a person no storm can undo. This is how you rebuild, not by chasing a new identity, but by embodying truth in the hidden places of daily life. You stop asking, how do I get my life back? And begin asking, what kind of life is worth living now? Not one rooted in fear or image, but in meaning, responsibility, and love. Psychologically, this is called integration. You don't deny the pain or isolate it. You weave it into the story. It becomes part of your strength, not a shadow to avoid. It humbles you, yes, but it also deepens you. So ask yourself, what truth do I want my life to stand on now? What virtues do I need to cultivate, starting today, not someday? What kind of person would I become if I stopped performing and started living honestly? You are not starting from scratch. You are starting from soul. And that place, though often ignored, is sacred ground. Begin there. Build there. And what rises won't be fragile. It will be real. This is not a return. It's a resurrection. You are not going back to who you were. You are becoming someone you had not yet dared to be. And the paradox is this: what felt like the end was really an unveiling, not of a better version of you, but of a truer one. A version forged in silence, tested in pain, and tempered in humility. You see, the point of collapse was never destruction for its own sake. It was revelation. Not everything you lost was a loss. Some things had to go, because they were never truly yours. And now, standing in the aftermath, you carry something deeper: clarity, resolve, tenderness, wisdom. Not because you avoided the fire, but because you passed through it. This new self is not louder or more impressive. It is quieter and more solid, less reactive, more rooted, less hungry for validation, more anchored in purpose. Because now you know what you didn't before. You can survive what you feared would destroy you. More than that, you can grow through it. And here is where your story stops being only yours. Because the self that emerges after the end is not meant to live for itself. It is meant to serve, to love, to witness. Pain, when redeemed, becomes compassion. Wisdom, when earned, becomes guidance. And your life becomes a lighthouse for those still lost in the storm. This is the turning point from self-preservation to self-gift, from surviving to offering. Viktor Frankl wrote that life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but by a lack of meaning. And meaning is found in responsibility, toward something beyond you. So ask yourself, what can I now offer the world, not despite what I've suffered, but because of it? Who around me is collapsing silently, waiting for someone to see them, not with pity, but with presence? What truth can I now live, not as theory, but as witness? You are not the same, and that's the point. If this journey through the ruins has touched you, leave a comment. Share what has remained in you and what has changed. Like this video, and subscribe if you're ready to keep walking a path that values truth over comfort, depth over ease. You were not made to remain in the rubble. You were made to rise, not polished, but real. And the world needs more of that. It needs you.